Hello everyone, this is Andrew and Anna Smith, and we wanted to give you an update on what's been new in our lives recently. So the biggest and most important update is that we are no longer in Papua New Guinea. In early January, we left Papua New Guinea and flew back to the United States, where we landed in Virginia. We spent some time with Anna's parents and family, celebrating a late Christmas, catching up, and then at the end of January, we hopped in a car and drove all the way out to where we are here now, which is McNeil, Arizona. This is the headquarters for Ethnos 360 Aviation. We were here in 2020 as I prepared to fly the airplane in Papua New Guinea, and now we are here for me to get training in the helicopter. Anna has also been busy being involved with some of the things around here, and she's going to share a little bit about that.
So I've been part of the hostessing team. This is the team that gets ready for visitors and volunteers. We have a lot of people who come here and volunteer their time, whether it's painting or cleaning things, whatever it is, fixing stuff up. They come and my team gets ready for them by preparing a house or a place for them to stay, as well as providing meals or whatever they need. And then I also work at the front desk. That involves greeting people as they come in, answering phone calls, flight following for our guys when they're up in the sky flying. I just watch and make sure that their route is going well and that nothing comes up that's not supposed to come up for them. And yeah, so those are a couple ways that I've been involved here.
So what I am doing in Arizona is I am learning to fly helicopters. I've had multiple years of flying airplanes in Papua New Guinea, so I have a relative understanding of how aviation works and how weather and things like that work. But what I don't know or haven't known is how to fly one of these and control it and make it do what we need it to do. And that's what I've been up to for the last several weeks. And so what we thought would be fun was to share with you guys a little bit about what I'm learning and kind of teach you how to fly a helicopter in a way. And so in order to fly a helicopter, you have to control it in three different major ways. The first one is obviously it's an aircraft and we want to fly, so we want to be able to go up. Well, eventually we also want to be able to come down. So the first control is up and down. The second control is we want to go somewhere. So for the helicopter, it's used to transport people or cargo. In order to go forward, that's a forward control. But what's really cool about a helicopter is you can also go backwards. Along with going backwards, we can't fly in straight lines all the time. So sometimes we're going to go left and sometimes we're going to go right. And so that is another control. So the forward, backwards, left, and right is the second control. And then the final control that you want to be able to do in a helicopter is yaw, or in a simple word, pivot. So sometimes it's really important that we want to keep the helicopter exactly where it is, but we need to turn the helicopter. And so that's called yaw and pivoting. So we thought it'd be cool to kind of show you guys how we do that with the helicopter. So the first one is up and down. In order to go up and down, we have a control called the collective. The collective is what makes the aircraft go up and down. And it's right here to the left of me. For the helicopter to go up, we pull up on the collective. And for the helicopter to go down, we go down on the collective. So as we pull up on the collective, there's a bunch of linkages that run through the helicopter and up to the main rotor. Up there, it changes the blade angle. So just like an airplane, as it's taking off, in order for it to get off the ground, it brings the nose up, which increases the angle of the wing, and it produces lift, and it flies. Well, in a helicopter, we need to do the same thing, except our wing is the rotor. And so those linkages on both blades will increase those angles, and it will produce lift, and then the aircraft will begin to climb. If we want it to climb less, we simply push down on that lever, and it will lower the angle of the blade, and the helicopter will come down. So now we know a little bit of how to go up and how to go down with the collective. Now we're going to talk about how to go forward, back, left, and right. And how we do that is with the control called the cyclic. So the cyclic is what makes the aircraft move forward, backwards, left, and right. So if I want the aircraft to go forward, I simply push forward on the cyclic and the helicopter will go forward. Well, how does it do that? Just like the collective, there's linkages that go all the way up to the main rotor. And it also changes the blade angles up and down to create lift. However, the collective does both blades, the cyclic does not. And what it does is if I were to push the cyclic forward, The blade, as it rotates towards the rear of the aircraft, the angle will go up. And then as it rotates and that same blade rotates to the front of the aircraft, the angle will go down. And so picture on top of the helicopter that the main rotor is like a plate or a disc. And as the lift increases on the back and decreases on the front, it will tip the whole rotor system forward and it will bring the helicopter forward. And what's really cool about a helicopter is it can do that in any direction. So if I want to go forward, I push forward. If I want to go backwards, I can just pull backwards. And you can do left, right, diagonal, in any direction you want to go, the helicopter will take you. So now you guys are almost helicopter pilots because we've covered going up and down with the collective. We've covered going left and right with the cyclic. Now we just need to talk about pivoting or yawing. And in order to do that, it's very simple. We have the anti-torque pedals. Those pedals are used to control the tail rotor. Right here, if you look down at my feet, there are two pedals, one for the left foot, one for the right foot. In order to pivot the helicopter to the right, I would push the right, and if I were to pivot to the left, I would simply push down on the left, and that will pivot the helicopter. What's happening is that is also changing the blade angles, just like the main rotor. The tail rotor blade angles change, producing less or more lift or thrust, and that blows air that pushes or pulls the tail to the right position to keep it where I want it to be. So there you have it. Now you know how to control a helicopter. You're basically a pilot already. Almost. It's not as easy as it seems, and I'm going to explain that now. So let's say the helicopter is just hovering, okay? And all we want to do is just make the helicopter go up. Well, that's easy, right? We'll just pull up on the collective, it'll produce more lift, and we'll go up. Almost. There's a physics phenomenon that what happens is when the aircraft is spinning the rotor, that same force that is used to spin the rotor, that same force equally and oppositely tries to spin the helicopter in the opposite direction. So as the rotor spins this way, the helicopter wants to spin this way. Well, that's easy to correct, right? All we have to do is push on the torque pedals or the anti-torque pedals, and that will keep us straight. So as I lift collective to go up, it's going to cause the engine to push more on the rotor, which means the helicopter is going to want to pivot or yaw even more. Well, okay. So as I come up with the collective, I just have to push left on the pedals. Not a problem. Now we're straight. Well, in order for the pedals or the tail rotor to counteract that yawing, it's going to be blowing air this way. And that's what's going to keep us straight. So instead of going this way, it's going to blow us and keep us straight. Well, as it's doing that, now we have air blowing this way. It's going to cause the helicopter to slide. So in order to keep it from sliding, now I must tilt the rotor disc to the side with the cyclic in order to fight the air flowing that way. So as I go up, it's not just up, but it's also left pedal and left cyclic, and that allows the helicopter to come straight up. And so just coming up, you've got to coordinate and balance all three of those, and it can be very challenging when you start out. And that doesn't account for wind or any other factor of just trying to control the helicopter, because what if you are trying to turn, and how much turn, and so on and so forth. So it can be a little bit of a challenge, and I have an amazing wife.
Yeah, so I had the opportunity to fly the helicopter for an hour, and what an experience that was. But before I even did that, I needed to sit in on a class in order to understand what I should and should not be doing. And I actually really enjoyed that class because it gave me a taste of the things that Andrew has learned and why the helicopter acts the way that it does. And it was super interesting. But anyway, so for this hour, I got to go through the pre-flight, help start up the helicopter, and then it was mostly the instructor that was flying it out to the airport, although I was pleasantly surprised at how relatively easy it is to control while you're moving forward. But man, when you get into a hover, is it ever difficult to control? And actually, Andrew and I joked a little bit that if I was able to hover in the first hour of ever flying a helicopter, we would change positions. And so I thought it'd be pretty funny if he became a nurse, but it didn't end up happening that way.
Did not.
So what the instructor did was he would control 2 out of the 3 controls and give me one of them to control. And so I started off with the pedals. And so that just makes it, like Andrew said, it like go like this and pivot. And that was going okay, so then he handed me the collective, which makes it go up and down. And of course, everything is interrelated, and so this poor instructor is trying to counteract all of my wrong inputs with his inputs that he's trying to do. And so I would start doing something, and all of a sudden we would just be like flying to the side, and I didn't let it get too far out of hand before I would say, take it over, and then he'd take it. And he would be controlling it, and he would bring it back super easily and make it sit there really still. And then he'd say, okay, 1, 2, 3, and he would give me just 2 controls out of the 3. And before long, sure enough, we'd be off the airport again or wherever. The last one, I never got all 3 going at the same time. The cyclic was the one that was the hardest for me. That's the left and right, forward, back. And that one is so particular. They tell you, if you just think of the direction you need to go, that will probably be enough. Because if you think, oh, I need to move my hand that way, that is way too far. And so it was an interesting experience. I'm super glad I got to do it and understand and appreciate all that Andrew's learned and the things that he's doing. It's really impressive.
So it's been a lot of fun to learn this new machine, and after weeks and weeks of practicing, on February 25th, my instructor gave me permission to fly it by myself, and that was a really exciting time to be able to operate this helicopter without an instructor and being able to do it all by myself. And so that was really cool. And hopefully in a couple weeks from now, I've been since flying the helicopter multiple times a week by myself, and in a couple weeks, we'll be going to take my check ride to get my commercial helicopter's license. And so we're excited, and I'm working really hard for that goal right now. And so it's really interesting, and now we're progressing into like emergencies and what happens if something goes wrong in the helicopter. And as a pilot, you're responsible to still fly it and still control it. And what's really cool is right now we're working a lot on engine failures, like what would happen if your engine were to fail. And so I used to fly airplanes in Papua New Guinea, and if your engine fails in an airplane, we only have 1 engine, 1 propeller, and so you become a glider. And it's pretty subtle. Like you can actually do this with people on board. If you were to go all the way back to idle, if you did it slowly and people didn't pick up on the noise change of the engine, you could get yourself into a nice glide and people don't even notice because it's just a nice glider. However, the problem with an airplane is at some point you're going to come down to the ground and you still have to have like 50 to 60 miles per hour. No matter where you're going to put down, you still have to deal with moving forward. And that's one of the really cool things that I've learned about a helicopter is in an engine failure situation. Now our engines are extremely reliable. They're jet engines that are mounted to a transmission that spin the rotor, and they just don't fail. But in the very, very unlikely scenario that it would, what's really neat about a helicopter is you can basically do a normal touchdown landing. Now it's going to look a little different than an airplane, and so what we've been learning and practicing a lot in the last couple weeks is if your engine fails, what do? So when we go around and we practice the very, very unlikely situation where we might lose our engine, we don't actually turn the engine off. What we do is we roll the engine back to idle so that the engine is still running, but it's just not producing any power to the rotor system. So if we were flying along, we would roll the engine back to idle, and immediately what we'll do is we will push down on the collective. And then we'll simply pull slightly aft on the cyclic, and that sets us up for a nice, quick forward gliding descent. So once you set up the helicopter like that, it puts the helicopter into a steep, but still a glide coming down to the ground. And instead of what normally the engine is spinning the rotor system, now as you're gliding down, there's a lot of air flowing up through the rotor system. And that is actually like a pinwheel, like blowing through a pinwheel, is spinning the rotor and keeping the rotor spinning. And as you get closer to the ground, you flare or bring the nose up, and all that forward momentum is turned into even more air flowing through the rotor system, which speeds up the rotor system. And then all you have to do is push forward, and your rotor system is still spinning as if the engine was spinning it, and then you can lower the helicopter to the ground. Now, if you were to do it perfectly, you could set down normally. However, typically you're in a hurry because you want to make sure you get to the ground before the rotor system slows down. So typically guys will touch down with a little forward movement, but it's not a big deal. here's a video of a helicopter doing it. It's not us, and I couldn't get a video of us outside. But this is the same type of helicopter, just a different pilot somewhere on YouTube, that is demonstrating what it's like to land without an engine. And what's fascinating to me and something I've enjoyed learning is that in many situations, I would rather lose an engine in a helicopter than I would in an airplane because of just how you're able to still control the helicopter even without an engine. So it's been really great to learn and experience these things. But as great as all of that stuff and as interesting as all that stuff is, it's still not as great as what we actually use these helicopters for. And so we're training so that we can go back to Papua New Guinea and use the helicopter to serve our missionaries there. We have friends in Papua New Guinea that are living among the Kuyu people. So they're missionaries to these people. And I have flown over them with the airplane and rocked my wings to say hi, but there is no chance that I would ever be able to land where they are in the mountains and the jungle that they live in. But the helicopter is being used to serve them. It's a helicopter-only location, and the helicopter brings them in. It brings their groceries. It helps them if they have medical issues or whatever. It's enabling those missionaries to be with the Kuyu people. And they have learned the language, they have learned the culture, and right now they're working on developing a written language and literacy, teaching the people how to read, because what's coming up next is they are going to have the opportunity to present to the Kuyu people who Jesus was, what he did, and the message he proclaimed, and they will have the opportunity to accept Christ and have eternity forever with their Creator. And that is so exciting. And so we just want to say thank you so much for being a part of this and supporting us, praying for us as we learn the helicopter and as we go back to Papua New Guinea and using these aircraft and these machines to not just fly around, but to actually spread the gospel to people that would otherwise not hear. So thank you so much for being a part of that. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video, and we just hope you have a great rest of your day.